This is Mark Anderson with FloristWare. With Valentine's Day behind us, we wanted to give you a webinar that would help you increase sales all year round. And I'm very happy to be here with Kathy Dudley. I've known and admired Kathy Dudley for several years, both for her success as a retail shop owner and also for her commitment to the industry. In addition to running her store, she's been a longtime member of SAF and very active in a number of roles there. It was as a member of SAF that Kathy visited the National Funeral Directors Association annual convention. She went to get an understanding of the changes in that industry and learn how florists could adapt to increase their sympathy volume. She's going to share some of what she learned with us right now.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I'm glad to be here. So as Mark said, it was late 2009 when a group of florists, probably about maybe 6 or 8 of us, went to the Funeral Directors Convention in Boston, courtesy of Smithers Oasis, who was very gracious enough to sponsor our booth. And we really went for a couple of reasons. We wanted to find out what we could bring back for flower shops in terms of what's going on in the funeral industry. We also wanted to be able to educate the funeral director about the benefit of flowers in sympathy occasions, and also to encourage the end of the in lieu of flowers. As we all know, none of us want to see in lieu of flowers in the newspaper. There are lots of other alternative phrasings that can be used. Not the topic for today, of course, but certainly a very important one. So what we had found from the funeral directors whenever we were there, just through conversation at our booth, as well as attending their educational seminars, we were allowed to do that, which was a great insight into the lives and struggles and successes of the funeral directors in the funeral industry. We came away with 6 funeral industry trends. These are defined by the industry themselves, not from me. I'm just basically going to share that information with you today. And also some of the individual findings from the funeral directors themselves on very specific ways that florists can help the funeral director and that we can do a better job. So the first trend in the industry that was defined, and that is important for us as well, is that funerals have increased personalization going on. Basically, the funerals, everyone wants them to be as unique as the person who died. So, for instance, whether you have all heard the story about a gentleman who had his recliner chair brought into the funeral home and he was laid out in his chair instead of in a casket. The remote control was in his hand. He was watching his favorite sports team. They had brought in a flat screen TV, and everyone came. They had a big party. Everyone was wearing their sports gear. A very good example, maybe an extreme example, but a very good example of the personalization that people are looking for in their funeral services. Another example that we had seen at the convention, there were a couple companies there that were displaying themed caskets. For instance, they had a casket that was for the motif of a fireman. They had a camouflage one. They had one that was Harley Davidson with all orange and black. They had military with um, the green, the camouflage, all that stuff on there that you would expect for a military funeral. They also had one that was painted with the American flag so that that flag would be permanently on the casket. Another instance of a personalization, for instance, services on a golf course. You'll see a lot more services taking place outside of the funeral home, and that's all part of the personalization experience that I can help you with. The most interesting point about all this that I saw was that most of the personalization that I was experiencing and had heard about were all masculine, not so much of feminine, but you can imagine that a woman's service, you may see one being held at their favorite spa or at the mall, or certainly very common to maybe have one in a flower garden or something like that. Now, for florists, what does it mean for us? One of the main things that florists need to do is to be ready for this. It's very easy to do. Stock up on personalized items such as golf tees, old golf clubs, fishing lures, fishing poles, garden gloves, watering cans, packs of cards, poker chips, anything that you can think of, sports memorabilia. I'm from Pittsburgh. I make sure that I have terrible towels in my store. Um, Pittsburgh Pirate memorabilia, things like that go with the area that you are in that people would maybe want to use in their funeral items. You can use this with or without flowers, which is going to be important coming up. The number two trend that we talked about in the funeral industry was advanced funeral planning. So whether this is pre-planned and or also prepaid, this is very similar if you think about in terms of a florist booking a wedding or an event and having guaranteed sales on the books. The funeral directors are also embracing this trend, which helps them guarantee revenue in the future. It also allows for the person planning the funeral to decide their own fate, so to speak. They get to choose what music they want played. They get to choose what readings they want to be read there. They get to choose the setting. Where do they want the service to take place? Do they want it in a church? Do they want it outside? Do they want it in their backyard or even in their living room? What time of day do they want it? Do they want it morning? Do they want it night? Do they want their hobbies incorporated? All of those details are going into play now, where before it was very traditional. So much more is being done on a one-on-one individual basis, and it's done ahead of time by the actual person for themselves. Partly the reason for this is that it's going to alleviate the stress on the loved ones after they've passed away. Partly, I think this is due to families getting smaller. Parents don't want the pressure put on maybe their only child or only two children. They want that to be taken care of so that their children don't have to worry about that going forward. For us as retailers, for florists, my first recommendation is that you talk to your funeral director. You need to have a clear sense of communication on what types of things are going on in those advanced planning meetings. What types of options are being given to the families? Are the funeral directors talking about flowers when they pre-plan? If not, why not? Should they be? Can they be? Can you help them with this? Those are all important questions that you need to ask, and probably not just ask once, but make it a communication effort on your part that you are going to be talking to them on a regular basis, maybe not something that's so predictable and pre-planned and formal, but just in casual conversation even, you can pick up a lot of information. And that's probably more important than anything, is to make sure that you're establishing that relation. Certainly, especially if you can help them get flowers into that pre-planning session. The next trend, and probably the most absolutely important in terms of what's affecting the business structure and the revenue stream in the funeral industry, is that cremations are on the rise. Without a doubt, you'll see in the chart that I have here from 1999 to 2025 with projections that are being made, the funeral business is going from about 25% cremations to almost 60%. In Canada, that's even higher. Expect Canada to be at 70% or higher by 2025. This cannot be denied, and it cannot be overlooked in what's coming up, not only in the funeral business, but also in the flower business. If you think about it, traditionally, florists have relied on sympathy to be about 30% of their revenue, and that's using traditional visitations. Cremation is going to change that a little bit. Partially, cremations are on the rise because of economics. The price of a cremation can be as low as one-fifth the cost of a traditional funeral, only 20% of the cost. For instance, a traditional funeral for the funeral home results in about $6,500 for the average funeral home sales. When you add in the vault costs, the cemetery plot fees, plus other expenses, including flowers and the grave marker, this is approximately $10,000. For people that are doing cremations, the average is more in tune with $1,500 to $2,000 total cost. So for the family, there's a great economic benefit. That's one of the key drivers in why cremations are on the rise. Right now, we're still coming out of recession. It's a huge, huge player in the reason why cremations are increasing. But you can see going forward, the Cremation Association predicts that that is going to just keep steadily rising and not go back at all. So for florists, it is imperative that you start a cremation portfolio. Very similar to how, hopefully, you all have regular sympathy portfolios with pictures of your own work for the funeral directors to see. You need to be creating settings just for cremations. Borrow an urn from your funeral director if you need to. Make an urn or put something in its place that you can represent an urn in your photo. But you need to be providing these pictures for the funeral directors to use. One of the main things that we sort of saw was the lack of knowledge on the funeral director's part on knowing how to use flowers in the cremation, how to sort of set that whole situation up. Now you've got this urn at the front of the room, and then what? Sure, we use some pictures, and sure, there might be some music playing, but as we all know, flowers really soften that room. Funeral directors are very used to seeing lid sprays, they're used to seeing side urns, they're used to seeing easel sprays. They're not used to seeing how flowers can be done very tastefully and very effectively around that smaller shaped urn or around a photo of a loved one that has passed away. So, because of that, it's important for you to take the lead in developing your own portfolio. The other thing that you're going to help do is perhaps stem the tide of the decreasing flower orders that are going now. It's going to be easier to do it now than it is going later. You're going to be prepared ahead of the big cremation rush. If you're not seeing in your area, you're going to now. Just take the lead and go talk to your funeral director. One way you can do this, and I think it's a great idea, I got it from a friend of mine, was have a funeral director open house. Make 4 to 6 different styles of cremation type pieces, set them up in stages around your store, have your own open house, and invite the funeral directors in your area all to your store. Give them something to eat, give them something to drink, make it casual, but make it very effective for them to sort of learn and see what flowers can do to make their job easier and to make them look better. Best part of all of this is get a photo area set up in your store, take your photos, have those ready for the funeral director to take back, get them priced and everything ready to go so that when the time comes, that funeral director is ready and they're going to have your pictures to sell, not the competitors down the street.